let's introduce our speakers today. I'd like to welcome Jackie Fendez and Carlos Ribeiro, both of Intelligentsia Research. Jackie and Carlos focus on qualitative research. They do general market as well, but specialize particularly with Hispanics. And they've literally spent thousands of hours in people's houses, in people's cars, shopping. Maybe they'll tell you some other places they've been with people, but they are really just totally enmeshed in the Hispanic market. So we're thrilled to have you here speaking with us today, Jackie and Carlos. I'm Lisa Cooper, RTI. We also do a lot of work to understand the U.S. Hispanic market across CPG, financial services, and healthcare spaces. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Carlos and Jack. Carlos?
Thanks,
Awesome.
Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for attending today. We really get excited when people find this topic interesting. It's live, we breathe every single day, and let's get right into the presentation. And it starts really with the cover, because we chose this cover is that we ask the question to ourselves and to clients, Hispanic consumers kind of be the missing puzzle piece to really taking your company or your product to the next level. And the other factor in choosing this cover is sometimes dealing with Hispanic consumers, reaching out to them and really getting to them is kind of putting a puzzle together. So hopefully you've all heard about the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, placement, and promotion. I won't hold my right now. So the first R is just recognizing the opportunity and then selling it into the company. Sounds like pretty simple. And after the 2010 census, when we all discovered just how prevalent and how large the market is, we thought to ourselves, well, you know, a lot of people, a lot of companies definitely should recognize the opportunity. And it did happen, but there are still many others that have not. And just so you get an idea of what's going on, in a recent survey of 150 marketing executives, 55% of them said that their CEOs did not support multicultural marketing initiatives. So recognition is still a hurdle to get over. Second is rewrite. Rewrite that business plan to integrate, and I emphasize integrate, Hispanic strategy and tactics. Really, Hispanic marketing should not be an afterthought. Oftentimes, we see that it is, and it's manifested in ways such as, I'm going to produce commercials or some type of initiative for my general market consumers, and I'll basically translate it, and let's see how it flies. So, again, rewrite those plans and make Hispanic an important part of those plans. Respect. Respect them as a market. It's a sizable market, and you're going to see in the next slide how large that market is today as a consumer or a customer, and you have to respect the quick example of some things that we've seen in doing our work. We did some work for a lottery. This is very interesting because in lotteries, oftentimes when you sign the back of a ticket to claim your prize, if it's a major prize, you are also signing the rights of the lottery to use your likeness and image, because winner awareness is a big part of lottery marketing. Well, we discovered there was a lot of pushback from Hispanic consumers, and when we dug deep, it was because A, they tend to be humble. They don't want to sort of brag, so to speak, about their winnings and their riches. And second was a very practical reason, because if they lived in a not so great neighborhood, they didn't want people around them knowing that they had this newfound wealth. So again, you have to respect those things as consumers and some of their cultural differences. Relationship. This is probably the most critical R on this slide, and that's why we left it for last. You have to establish a relationship with Hispanic consumers. It's about making the token effort because that will be recognized immediately. It's a long-term commitment with them, and it's a commitment that will pay off. We have an example, and you may have heard of an outfit called Pizza Patron. It's a 100-store chain and Hispanic areas, and really wasn't making a lot of head. Figured out very quickly that if he established a relationship with Hispanic consumers, it would really pay off. And now what's happened is that he custom makes a lot of items for Hispanic consumers. That pizza there is called una toluqueña, and it's a 3-meat pizza with things like chorizo, and you get 3 jalapenos. And then how about this for the ultimate in relationship building? They even have accepted Mexican pesos as payment in their stores. So now Hispanic is such an integral part of his strategy or the company's strategy that they open up in areas only if it is 50% Hispanics. That's a relationship.
Hey, Carlos, can I interrupt?
Go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
Before you go on, we got our first question. We have a lot of attendees on the phone and they were wondering, do you have any examples of consumer products that grew because they focused on Hispanic consumers? So you gave us a great restaurant example. Is there a CPG example that you have?
Most definitely. We've done work across the board in CPG and other areas. One great example of that is Tang. Tang, what we all know, well, if you're of a certain age, like my age, we saw the advertising that this is what the astronauts drink, but it's also now what Hispanics drink. And years ago, Tang realized, the marketing team at Tang realized that really they weren't getting anywhere with general population consumers because they were switching away from powders. Powders were considered artificial and unhealthy. But Tang did a brilliant thing. Really, they started their marketing in Latin America, and it worked here as well, where Tang has become a significant brand among Hispanics. They focus marketing efforts now almost exclusively on Hispanic, and in Latin America, Mexico, they developed unique flavors just for that market and grew the brand. So that's an example, just one example of how a product can really leverage this market.
I wanted to can you guys hear me? This is Jackie. I wanted to add something as well to relationships. The good thing about the relationship with Hispanic is that compared to some of the general population, they're still very kind of open and not as jaded. They like to watch commercials. They like advertising. They believe it. And that, if you've ever been to a general market focus group, you know that's not always the case with some of our consumers kind of being our marketers and saying, well, I've heard that, and they're trying to do this, and they're trying to target. Well, Latinos, Hispanics, you know, they're still pretty confident that if you're doing something in the general area of advertising, then you must be telling the truth. Now, I can't hear you out there. I know some of you guys are laughing, but it's true, and they like it, and they feel like that's part of the relationship. They feel that if you're spending the dollars and the time and the effort to talk to them about your product, then surely they've got to return that loyalty and that favor by using you. And so when they see you out there, when there's grassroots efforts, when there's advertising, when there's digital, when there's mobile, it just strengthens that bond and that relationship. Because like you hear all the time, you know, if you don't care about me, why should I care about you? And so that loyalty, even today, even with everything that's going on, even with the competitiveness of most infrastructures out there, no matter what your brand or your product is, it's still relatively not terribly difficult, let's say, to garner that loyalty and to get Hispanics and Latinos to listen and to like your product. Okay, I guess you're welcome.
Thanks, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Because you talked about the opportunity, how big is it really? So according to census estimates, dollar opportunity, pretty large, mostly certain markets such as Miami, New York, and with the exception of far sent facts that really continue to kind of shock us even. Things like, did you know that Colorado is over 30 Hispanic? Would you even think that states such as Idaho, Kansas, Massachusetts are already over 10% Hispanic? And would you believe that cities fastest growing Hispanic cities in this country? America has really flexed his muscle, and it's part of our culture now, of American culture. So there you have a bowl of salsa. Salsa is now the number. How popular? Well, they outperform hamburgers and hot dog buns and ketchup sales. Also, it's flowed into entertainment. Hispanic American Mexican food, as far as,
again, as you think about your own brands, as you think about what you're doing and where your efforts are going, you know, things are starting to mesh. It's it now to be Hispanic or Latino, and so efforts and strides in that regard are also considered being, you know, on leading edge, being hip, knowing what's trending, knowing what's out there. So, you know, all of a sudden we've also become super cool and hip, and that's not a bad thing. That helps in every way, and it helps a lot of brands make strides where they might have not thought of even, you know, forging forward. So everywhere it's happening, and it's happening very all of us, I think, in the end. Go ahead, Carlos, sorry.
That's all right. So what is that great myth that Hispanic consumers don't want to acculturate? We hear this a lot. And you know what? I don't blame people for thinking that. If you come to Miami, you better speak Spanish, because there are a lot of people here that do not speak English. But the reality of it is that they do not want to be outliers. They want to integrate into society. They realize the importance of, first of all, and very basic, big desire is to learn English. They do want to learn to speak English. They do want to become proficient in it, because that they know that pays off. It means better jobs and better lives. That said, it doesn't mean that they have to lose their own culture, the most important of which is the language. So back in 2008, things started to change for the Hispanic female. And we focus a lot on Hispanic females because they tend to run the household as far as what products make it into the home and not. They have a lot of influences and influencers, which we're going to talk about. But again, the home is hers. So, and when we talk CPG, which is a big category that we're in, it's about the woman and her decisions. So when did this woman start to change? And there was really a marked point in time, which was 2008, where she started to change and she started to become more empowered. And it starts with, we talked about not giving up their culture, and we coined a phrase after seeing this over and over and over again, and it's really neat because it's not just among the first generation immigrants. We see this also in millennials that are second and third generation, but it's a phenomenon we call cultural cherry picking. And what that means is that these consumers leave behind some aspects of traditional culture, they maintain others, and then they adopt some aspects of American culture based on their individual preferences, their situations, and their needs. So this is an individual phenomenon. It doesn't happen the same for everybody. Then in 2008, we had an economic downturn in this country, and all of a sudden, a lot of these women who may have never worked outside the home, or maybe they worked in their home country and didn't work in the United States, they had to go back to work because they had to help support their family. Their husbands may have been out of work at that point. A lot of construction workers, service workers lost their jobs. All of a sudden, the woman now has a little more equal footing or equal standing in the home, and she can call more of the shots. So she started to become more empowered. And then they started to get into technology. Technology exposed her to a world that she hadn't known before, things she hadn't seen. She was able to capitalize on her social nature by reaching out through social sites such as Facebook, or El Face as some people call it in Spanish, and really just got to know the world around her better. Now, what did these things produce? Really, it was a perfect storm for revolution. Not evolution, revolution, because the changes came about very quickly. And this also led to a phenomenon that we call acculturation leapfrogging, where with technology especially, they jump even ahead of the general market. And the perfect example of that is they skipped the desktop, they skipped the laptop, and went right to mobile. So that is what we refer to as that perfect storm for change, really the impetus that led to this woman's empowerment.
And so the reason this is important is because, there's a lot of studies out there, and, I know that a lot of the secondary research you want to read, and you hear, well, they're saying this and they're saying that. So what's changing is the following. We used to, they don't want to try new products. Well, that's not true. They do want to try new products. They may take a little bit longer to convince. Of course, they don't want to waste their money. But willing, they are looking for new things. If you're in the snacking world, it used to be a few years ago that we used to hear, well, they like what they like. They don't want to make changes. They're worried. Well, that's a whole other world about snacking, but they're trying new things. There's a lot of competition out there in the CPG world. And the women, when they start working and they start bringing money into the family, into the home, that gives them a vote. And where maybe before they wouldn't try things because the husband to waste money, or the husbands weren't open to new products or things that were out of their comfort zone. Now these ladies, because they're bringing in money, they're bringing in things into the home that maybe the husbands may not like it, talking about food products, but they're willing to try it. The kids are willing to try it. They're changing things up. They're trying new things, and they're using their influence to make decisions that maybe before they weren't making as strongly or as definitively. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. I know that there's some more stuff on some other slides.
Thanks, Shaggy.
Welcome.
So the boomers and Gen Xers are still the core. They're still spending the dollars. They especially the boomers we've all heard they have a lot of money to spend. But now the focus is shifting to our millennials, and rightfully so, because there are 90 million millennials in this country, and 22% of them are Hispanic. They are entering their peak years of earnings. So I've seen some statistics that by 2017, millennials are going to start to outspend their boomer parents. So that's an amazing statistic. So on a national level, we're talking about 22% Hispanic millennials. But go to a Los Angeles, a Houston, a New York, or Chicago, and they can be upwards of 25 to 50%. As you can see, Hispanics really also have led the charge of ethnic diversity in this country. They will account for more than 80% of the growth in population of the millennials, of people 18 to 29 over the next few years. So who are these Hispanic millennials? Well, the easy answer is that they really are a lot like non-Hispanic millennials. Things like they're very tolerant and mixed with other cultures. They're very socially conscious. Their relationships are partnerships, and they're dependent on their parents even when they leave the home. But there's one big difference is that they remain connected to their culture, to family values, to music, and to food. Food is very important to us. Food is probably the last thing we'll lose along the acculturation process. We may not speak a lick of Spanish, but we never forget mom's and or grandma's cooking. We'll always go back to our cultural favorites. So those are some of the differences, and there are many differences when it comes to food and Hispanic millennials versus their cohorts. And for example, 8 out of 10 Hispanic millennials enjoy eating traditional Hispanic food. 7 out of 10 enjoy, by the same token, American food. Close to half buy more Hispanic or Spanish foods and products than American. So there are some key differences that affect purchase behavior and what they're going to enjoy.
Hey, Carlos, before you go on, can I ask 2 great questions that we got?
Sure.
Okay. The first one is, are the terms Hispanic and Latino used interchangeably? That's funny. That was a question that I thought about. Are there any differences in the terms, and do Hispanics prefer one over the other?
Great question. And you know what? I get a smile on my face when I hear that, because you hear so much about this and all kinds of technical and geographical explanations, and really at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Interesting is that the term Hispanic and Latino really only exists in this country. If you live in Mexico, you're Mexican. If you live in Colombia, you're Colombian. And that's what we're starting to see in this country. We're starting to see that even millennials, when you ask them what you are in terms of their ethnicity and culture, they'll say, I'm Mexican, I'm Cuban, I'm Puerto Rican. So that's what now. And the others, they are used pretty much interchangeably. Traditionally, on the West Coast, Latino is a little bit more used, and on the East, it's more Hispanic. So that's. Go ahead.
I'll throw in a little something. This conversation could be a whole presentation by itself. There are some politics involved, and you know, depending on where you're from, whether you're Mexican, if you're Caribbean, if you're from the Caribbean, if you're from Central or South America, you know, it has to do with those bad boys, the Spaniards, and how kind of conquered everybody. And so it's not about, you know, if you're in America, well, you know, there is a Hispanic America, and there is a so politics aside, you can say Hispanic and be fine, and we're tending to use the term Latino more, just because in Spanish, Latino is Hispanic. So it's not an easy answer, but we feel that if you use either term is fine and accepted in the realm of work that we do. Probably, personally, I think that we're using Latino more these days, just because we hear it out there. I think the term's a little hipper. I think men and women, that's the term they like to use. The other thing that's important to understand when we're talking about acculturation, step back, is that the big thing is that everyone wants to be inclusive, not exclusive. So, you know, a lot of the millennials, especially different cities where there is a diverse culture, you know, they've got Latino friends, they've got non-Latino friends, they have Asian friends, they have African American friends, and we just did a project last week where we talked a lot about this with young men, saying, you know, yeah, I'm Latino. I'm proud of it. I want to share my food and my music, culture, but I want to be recognized as an individual, not just because I'm Latino. I mean, I'm good at this, and I happen to be Latino, and I want to include my other friends that are from other nationalities. So when we're showing them creative and when we're testing advertising, and it doesn't matter if it's in Spanish or it's in English, they want to know of a world. You know, they're not just a culture, they're part of a world, and their culture happens to be a very integral part of that world. So,
Hello?
Sorry?
Alpel?
I'm not sure what that is.
I think we're getting a little
Oh
interference.
boy.
We're getting a little
Technology.
interference. Yeah, but
Okay,
anyway,
well,
that was it.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie. And before we get into, I see we have a shopping slide up, but before we get into that, we have another about the role that women play, and are they playing a larger role in financial decisions, such as in...
I just need a swatch of this blueberry. I'm going to see if I can find some.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, most definitely women are playing a larger role in financial decisions. As a matter of fact, they, maybe not in decisions, it hasn't always been, but as far as kind of keeping the house financially in order, the woman has always played a role there. But yes, now they are playing more of a role in financial decisions in general. But I say that with a caveat, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, and I can get ahead of myself. It doesn't matter. A lot of decision-making is made collectively among Hispanics. If you've ever seen a Hispanic, or I should say Hispanic family go buy a car, it really is a sight to see, because everybody from the kids to the mom to the dad to the grandma, maybe the cousin, and maybe even the dog will go along to shop for a car. So a lot of decisions are made collectively, and yes, the woman is definitely more involved these days.
Well, and I think it's not a black and white answer either. I think that depending on the category that you're talking about, it could be a little different. If you're talking financial services, if you're talking insurance, if you're talking healthcare, you know, we've worked in all these areas. It can be a little bit different, and it also can be a little different depending on what stage of life and how acculturated the Latino consumers that you're talking about. What we do know is that more and more, because of a lot of reasons, technology not being, you know, the least of them, women have more access of information at their fingertips. So because of that, I think they're taking a much more active role than before. On the one side, they're bringing money into the family. So again, what we said earlier, they have a vote. They didn't have a vote always, but they do now. They're becoming more knowledgeable things because they're on the internet, they're finding things out, they're on their, you know, mobile, they have access at their fingertips, where before it used to be, you know, a lot of these folks would go to their kids, you know, either to be the translator.
Did we lose?
We may have lost Jackie. Okay.
All right.
Actually, it piggybacks perfectly this next image, which is product research has increased. Latinos over-index in their use of the internet to research products before they buy. So overall, Hispanic are digitally engaged than the U.S. pop. Coupon use is up. This is really something that was born out of necessity. It used to be that Hispanic consumers did not use coupons a lot. And there are many reasons for it, from not wanting to clip coupons to being embarrassed if they went up to the counter and for some reason or another the coupon was not accepted, they held up the line. So that was something that really was a barrier to coupon use. Now this has a little twist to it. They're still not clipping, but they love coupons that they can get digitally. Also, Jackie talked about how Hispanic consumers love to try new products. That is true. Oftentimes they want to be the first. They want to be the so-called expert because they've tried a new product, they've accepted it, and they've spreaded the word. So that's something they love to do. Sampling is huge. We understand that it can be an expensive tactic, but it definitely works with Hispanics. I don't know if you've ever gone, well, come on, see if you admit if you're guilty of going to a Costco on a Saturday and having pretty much your meal there, your lunch, your dinner, whatever it is. This is a treasure hunt for Hispanics because it's an opportunity to try new products, bring them into the home, and they realize, as Jackie said before, wasting money or products is a no in Hispanic culture. More wasting the product. You don't want to buy something and have it go and have your family not like it, which is an emotional blow, and second, having to throw it away. So again, sampling is very important.
Another thing, can you guys hear me again?
Yeah.
Okay, so what to kind of include here is that Latino families do go shopping together, and it's not just one decision maker, and some of you may know this. So there's the stock up trips and the trips in between, but on the weekend, taking the family, including the husband, the kids, and grocery shopping more than one grocery retailer is something that's very typical. So you have kids putting things in the cart, you have dad putting things in the cart, you could have a 2-hour grocery trip or more because it's an activity. And so most of the stuff is left in the cart. I mean, some things get taken out, we hear the mom saying, well, we won't let them bring a lot of chocolate and stuff like that, but most of the stuff that's chosen and put in the cart stays in there if it's within, of course, their budget. So what does that mean? That you've got not just influencers, you have decision makers that include the males and the kids in the family. And I think that's important depending on what your category, your product is, because it's not just mom. Mom, unlike the general market mom, Latina moms, I mean, they're not as much of a gatekeeper, more of a provider. And remember, for us, all of us, food is love, unfortunately. So keep that in mind, because the decision, a lot of times, is happening in the store with mom and her posse.
And so, Jackie, this is Lisa, to link that back to something else we talked about a moment ago about acculturation and Hispanic consumers wanting to fit in and acculturate. I think a lot of that goes through their children, right? So if the mom doesn't want her kid to be at school having a strange Hispanic snack, quote unquote,
correct,
and to be ostracized for that. And so there's that element of her showing love to her child by helping him or her to acculturate.
Well, not only that, that whole big thing on the good-for-you snacks and the good-for-you food and how moms learn a lot about nutrition, a lot of it is coming in through the kids. So the kids are the ones teaching their moms. So they learn about nutrition at school, and then they tell their moms, Mom, don't send this anymore to school. The teacher, and it goes beyond wanting or having that list that they give you. It's really about how these kids are perceived. Now we're talking maybe about the smaller kids and the teens by their peers. What you take to school, what's in your lunchbox, it's got to be right. And so the kids are teaching the moms what's the right kind of food, and beyond that, not just what they take to school, they're teaching their moms, we need to incorporate more veggies, mom, we need to incorporate, whatever it is that they're hearing about at school, whether it's fiber or this or that. There's other ways that these ladies get information. There's, if you have younger kids, WIC does a really good job of teaching Latinos. A lot of these women are parts of social clubs and through the churches, and a lot of these churches and church groups provide nutrition classes, and they learn about things that way. But they also get that information from, advertising and TV. So they're still lagging behind the general market, but they're much more aware these days than they were even a year or two ago. So they'll have the keywords, and you'll hear them say organic, and you'll hear them say maybe high fructose corn syrup and stuff. That doesn't mean that they know everything, but they're hearing these things. So they try to cut back, but not at the expense of flavor or if it's something the kids want. So, for example, they may know that they want to keep out some of the bad stuff, but if the kid really likes it and she's cooking their food, whatever that thing is, that product is, it's still going to make it into the home. She may hide it, she may put it on a hierarchy into the home because she's going to allow for that. We could get into more specifics, but I don't want to cut Carlos off, and we can options at the end.
Those were excellent points, Jackie, and that basically is her strategy. She doesn't keep much out of that shopping cart. Are candy and sodas. That's it. Anything else goes, and her strategy is just to control portions once they come into the home.
Yeah.
So how do Hispanic consumers feel about shopping? In a word, they basically love it. They really enjoy the experience. It's a multi-sensory and connected experience, and opportunity to go into a large Hispanic supermarket such as Rancho Markets, Northgate in Los Angeles, Sedano's in the South Florida area. There's quite a few of them. You get a sense for that theater-like experience when you see tortilla makers and tortillas being made there and served hot, piñatas hanging all over the place, just huge, elaborate displays selling cultural food. It really is a neat experience, and they take it all in. Also, as far as a connected experience, it's very interesting that Hispanic consumers, when they are in the store, they will actually connect with friends and family and say, hey, look what I just bought. And there are some differences with Hispanic consumers compared to the general population, and just to name a couple of them, they like touching and feeling. Definitely, they interact more with store brochures, with signs, aisle markers, those kinds of things, and also they spend 10% more than general population at the store, at the grocery store. So they have bigger families, and obviously this is critical because there's a good chance that for a grocery store you're going to get larger per sale revenues, and also more chance of you being included in that cart. One-stop shopping is definitely a driver. Walmart has done a great job, and it's not for the sake of convenience necessarily. Really, it goes back to what Jackie said. It's an experience for the family, and a place like Walmart is a great place for Hispanic families because there's something for everyone. The kids, if they're of a certain age, they can go off by themselves and explore the toys or whatever they like. Dad can go and do his thing, and mom can do her shopping. And finally, Jackie mentioned this, Hispanic consumers are multiple channel shoppers. They'll shop anywhere. One reason is for deals. They really hunt down deals. Store circulars are very important. They really dig into them and find out where the best deals are, and they navigate their selection of stores that way. Sometimes it could be as simple as, well, it's as simple as price, or it could be something like a specific cut of meat. That's why you see a lot of taquerias, which are butcher shops, and they have the specific cuts of meat that maybe a major supermarket like a Kroger, for example, may not have. So mainstream operations now are starting to really cater to this audience. Here are a couple of examples. Markets, just a great operation in the Southeast. They win awards every year. Service, they have up a sub-brand called Public Sabor. Sabor means flavor in Spanish. And a national operation. I don't know if you can see the picture there, but it says CVS Pharmacy y Más, which means and more. So again, there's a Hispanic flair to these, and that's what we refer back to when we say it's about the relationship. This is part of building a relationship. It shows that they really care about this consumer. They feel this consumer is very important. So now you're going to speak to the subject and what's most important. So media, definitely media is important because you're not going to reach them on certain, if you're talking about an ad buy on certain networks, stations, etc. So you have to be in the right place for sure. Language, most definitely. You have to worry about language. There's still plenty of unacculturated or less acculturated, I should say, consumers who prefer their information in Spanish. So then there are others, such as millennials, that English is their first language. So language is definitely a consideration. But these two are not necessarily the most important. What's most important is that you be culturally relevant. No matter what language you speak to them in, no matter what the medium may be, you have to be culturally relevant. That is most important. You have to be sensitive to that culture and touch them at an emotional and cultural level.
I have to say something just really quick. We did some groups again recently with these youngs for beer, which is always fun, and you think, okay, well, if you've got women in a bar, you're good. And yes, that's still true. Okay, I don't want to say that it's not, but it's so interesting to see guys around the table. And these guys were very creative. I mean, they were young guys and they had their piercings, and they were a very creative group, and they're just like very cool guys, very hip, very artsy, kind of, and bohemian. And yet when we showed spots, and these were Latino guys, they all went towards or preferred the spots that kind of tugged a little bit at their heartstrings, the ones that talked about maybe the relationship with them and their dads, or insinuated family, or they were still deep down inside, after all that facade, you kind of went through that and you dug a little deeper. They really were at their realm, and it was about the feeling, it was about the nostalgia, it was about who they are, and that's something that's very important. And we've noticed that whenever we see advertising that's very, very good and that's award-winning and that's just increasing, of course, market share, it's always the one that has something that connects with them on a very, very kind of deep level, and it could still be funny and it could still be interesting, but it touches those core values, and we know that works. So that's where you see the marketers that are doing the right job. They understand that cultural relevance, and that, don't ever think that that's not important. That is key in really across every category.
Yep, and what I think Jackie failed to mention is that the general population spots were obviously in English, but the spots that they gravitated towards, even though they were English dominant, were the Spanish language spots.
Right.
So let's talk about some of their language usage, and this is interesting because 64% speak at least some Spanish in the home. Here's an interesting one. Mostly 58%. 30% remain dominant. So both languages can be used, again, the key being cultural relevance. So if you look at the big picture, 36% of Hispanic adults say they are English dominant at home. 58% of adults say they are English dominant outside the home, but big numbers that that speak Spanish only or Spanish dominant. So let's talk a little bit about media. So when you talk to Spanish dominant respondents, just 30% watch only Spanish language television, but adults, 28% of that subsegment consume some kind of Spanish language television. And probably the best example I can come up with, and it's almost comical, is I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to watch a soccer game, the same soccer game, and it happens World Cup every 4 years and some other times as well when it's a big game. Watch it in Spanish versus watching it in English. Watching it in Spanish is just so much more fun. There's a lot more emotion in it. And you see a lot of these guys we talk to, the millennials who are English dominant, they will definitely watch soccer in Spanish because it's just that much more fun. Now, just because English definitely has its Spanish language, television continues to grow. There's all kinds of investment in the space. Fox is now into this Robert Rodriguez, who he's done a lot of movies. I won't say this was his best effort, but like Machete and some movies. And he's very well known.
He also did Spy Kids and stuff. He's done tons. All the Spy Kids movies, yeah.
Yeah. So he has gotten into the act too. He's gotten into he's come out with called El Rey, right, Jackie, the King?
Yes.
El Rey Network, yeah. So even he's gotten into the act. So, but things are changing indeed, because there's no doubt that Univision is the 800-pound gorilla in this space. But now there are other options, and one of those options is an operation called Me Too, M-I-T-U, Me Too, and that has grown to close to 40 million subscribers on YouTube. It's multi-language, multicultural, very interesting channel, YouTube channel. If you ever get an opportunity, check it out. So we mentioned this before. We talked really over-index in their use of digital technology, of mobile technology, to access videos on YouTube, or they prefer. They do things like download electronic coupons that we talked about. They use cards. That's another thing that we didn't mention when we talked about their shopping habits. They love loyalty cards probably more than coupons, because it's just an easy way to get a discount, and that's one of the pointers we would definitely extend to you, is just to keep it simple, and a loyalty card is one way to do that. Also, they store debit and credit card information to use as payment in their mobile devices. They're doing a lot more of their banking on mobile devices, basic things such as checking and transferring balances. So what are the implications for you? The implications is that at this point, if you're going to do something with Hispanic consumers, it's almost a must to develop strategies for mobile, and to have some kind of mobile platform for them to use. So this is a case, and we've talked about, yes, you might be able to reach them in English. Yes, you know, maybe English is not the key, maybe it's Spanish, but it's really all about the nuance. And this is a tale of two frying pans, and it looks kind of funny out there, but really the conclusion was you know, I'll say it, I'll beat my chest a little bit. It was an award-winning conclusion, because at the end of this, we were part of a team that was recognized with an Ogilvy Award for this work. And we were doing work for a cooking spray, a well-known cooking spray, and the initial findings were that residue on the pan was a problem for both general market consumers and Hispanic consumers. So it was going to stop right there. Residue is a problem. We're just going to talk about residue in advertising. But we said we need to dig deeper. And what we found out after we did research among both general market and Hispanic consumers were, yes, residue is a tension point, but there are different underlying reasons for this tension point. For general market consumers, it was all about the fuss of having to clean these dirty pots and pans and not being able to get that residue off. For Hispanic consumers, interestingly, it was what they felt that residue could do to them and their family. Similar campaigns were developed, but obviously covering and addressing these two different areas. And you're going to see one is that this one first aired during the 2014 Oscars.
Okay.
Do you have it? Do you have control?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to play the McDonald's commercial first.
Hey, good morning, man. How you doing? Good. How are you? That's David. Gabriel. Okay, it's your first customer. Welcome to McDonald's, man. Take your order. Gabriel, ¿eres tú? Gabriel? Gabriel, ¿eres tú? Welcome to McDonald's. Nosotros queremos ser los primeros. Yo le dije que tu mamá. Oye, Gabriel, ¿me puedes hacer unas papitas? ¿Cuándo se me han olvidado las papitas? Okay, anything else? No, es todo. Okay, I'll see you at the next window. Ahora sí. Buen trabajo, mijo. Thank you. How you doing, man? Bye. It's okay. Classic video. Tu primer trabajo, tu segunda familia. Hay algo que te va a encantar en McDonald's.
Obviously, that whole kind of just bringing in the Hispanic element, but making it relevant to anyone who watches that commercial. I think this one is for Buick, if I'm not mistaken. We'll end on this.
Looks like the Garcia's got a new car. Maybe he got a raise. For him. For sure. place. One expectation.
So
Go
ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, just a quick word on both of those spots. Obviously, two different approaches. As Lisa said, the first one is obviously you hear some Spanish, so very much culturally relevant, and I get a kick out of seeing that spot because that's just so us. The consumer insight on that one is just spot on. And then the other spot, and I don't know if you missed it, because at the very beginning it says, looks like the Garcias got a new car. And this is just perfect for millennials, because what millennials are looking for, and as Jackie said, they want to be part of the group. They don't want to be singled out. Yes, they know they're different, but still they want to be part of the group. So that commercial does a great job of giving them that wink and the nod, not being so obvious as the McDonald's. It shows aspiration as well. Obviously, here you have a Hispanic family living in a pretty upscale neighborhood. So both of them we feel did just an outstanding job.
Yeah, those are great. So we've reached the end of our time together. We would like to thank you, Jackie and Carlos, of course, and thank you everyone on the phone. We hope that you got some great tidbits about the Hispanic market, and if you have any questions, you could certainly follow up and ask them of us. And thanks for dealing with our technical difficulties there at the end. We appreciate it. Have a great day.